The black ships of the Vex Empire cut through space like knives through silk. Their hulls absorbed light rather than reflected it. No stars twinkled off their surfaces. They were holes in space, moving with purpose, bringing death. Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. At 8 feet tall, he loomed over the other Vex officers. His gray skin was marked with battle scars, each one earned through combat and preserved as a badge of honor. The exoskeleton plates on his shoulders and chest gleamed under the blue lights of the command center. "Status report," he said. His voice was deep and cold. Captain Mara approached. She was shorter than Thorne, but still impressive by any standard. Her movements were quick and efficient. Like all Vex, she wasted no energy on unnecessary actions. "The Krell defense fleet has been destroyed, Admiral," she reported. "Their orbital stations have fallen. Ground resistance continues but will not last beyond the next cycle." Thorne nodded. The Krell were the 17th species to fall to the Vex during his command. They had fought well, better than most, but the outcome was never in doubt. Nothing in the universe could stand against the Vex. This was simply a fact, like gravity or the vacuum of space. "Casualties?" Thorne asked, more out of procedure than concern. 23 ships damaged, 8 beyond repair. Approximately 6,000 ground troops lost. Thorne frowned. That was higher than expected. The Krell had managed to surprise them with hidden weapon emplacements. Still, it was a small price to pay for another world added to the Empire. "Begin resource extraction." "Immediately," he ordered. "Suitable Krell specimens should be processed for labor assignment. The rest are to be eliminated." Mara nodded and turned to relay the orders. This was the way of things. The Vex had followed this pattern for 10,000 years. They discovered. They conquered. They consumed. This was the natural order of the universe. Later, Thorne stood in his private chamber, looking at the holographic display of the conquered Krell homeworld. It was a beautiful planet, rich in resources. Its oceans glowed with bioluminescent life. Its continents were covered in strange spiral-shaped forests. All of it now belonged to the Vex Empire. His door chimed. "Enter," he said. Intelligence Officer Wren stepped into the room. Wren was unusual for a Vex. He was smaller than most, with an oversized head that housed an enhanced brain. His kind were rare, one born perhaps every few hundred years. They lacked physical power but possessed analytical abilities that even the most advanced Vex computers could not match. "Admiral, the scout ships have returned from the edge of the Orion Arm," Wren said. Thorne turned from the display. "And?" "They found something interesting." Wren's voice had a hint of excitement and emotion most Vex rarely showed. "A developing civilization. They call themselves humans." Thorne's upper lip curled slightly. "Another species to conquer. Another world or worlds to strip of resources." "Show me." Wren waved his 6-fingered hand and the hologram of the Krell world disappeared. In its place appeared a small blue-green planet. "Their homeworld. They call it Earth," Wren explained. "A water world with 7 continents, oxygen atmosphere, gravity slightly lower than our standard." The image zoomed out to show a star system. 1 sun, 8 planets, several dwarf planets and asteroid belts. "Their level of technology?" Thorne asked. "Early space age. They have colonies on their moon and neighboring planet, small outposts on several moons of their gas giants. They've sent primitive robotic probes beyond their system, but their fastest ships would take decades to reach even the nearest star." Thorne grunted. "Primitives, then. Hardly worth his personal attention. The interesting part," Wren continued, "is their history." The hologram shifted to show images captured by the scout ships. Humans building cities. Humans fighting wars. Humans creating art. Humans exploring their world. "They've only had industrial technology for about 300 years, Wren said. "Before that, they were using animal power and simple machines. But look at the rate of advancement. The images flashed faster. Horse-drawn carriages became steam engines. Propeller aircraft became jet engines. Vacuum tubes became microchips. Rockets became space stations. No other species we've encountered has advanced this quickly, Ren said. From their first powered flight to landing on their moon took them less than 70 years. Thorne frowned. That was an unusual but ultimately meaningless. Are they a threat? Ren hesitated. No, their weapons are primitive. Nuclear fission, early fusion, basic energy weapons. Their ships have minimal shielding, but what? Their psychology is different. They fight constantly, against their environment, against each other. They've had thousands of wars in their short history. Their literature is filled with stories of struggle against impossible odds. They seem to enjoy challenge. Thorne laughed, a harsh barking sound rarely heard from a Vex. All species fight when they must. All species surrender when they should. These humans will be no different. Ren didn't look convinced. There's something else. They're highly adaptable. Their planet has environments ranging from Arctic to desert to tropical, and they've colonized all of them. They can survive temperature ranges that would kill most species. Enough, Thorne said, waving a dismissive hand. Prepare a standard conquest plan. I will assign Captain Drav to lead the operation. With respect, Admiral, Ren said. I believe this species warrants more study before— More study? Thorne's voice dropped dangerously low. Are you suggesting that these primitives might pose a challenge to the Empire? Ren looked down. No, Admiral. Good, because that would be absurd. Thorne turned back to the hologram, studying the blue-green world. 17 worlds have fallen to me alone. Hundreds more to the Empire before I was born. These humans will join the others, either as slaves or as extinct curiosities. Ren bowed and left the chamber. 3 standard cycles later, Thorne stood again on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest. The massive dreadnought was leading a fleet of 100 ships toward the edge of human space. It was larger than necessary for such a primitive species, but Thorne believed in overwhelming force. It prevented resistance, which prevented waste. Captain Mara approached, her face showing unusual concern. Admiral, we've received a transmission from Scout Squadron 3. What is it? Thorne asked, noting her tone. They initiated first contact, with a human outpost on what the humans call Mars. They followed standard intimidation protocol, disabled their communications array with precision strikes. And? Mara swallowed. The humans counterattacked. They destroyed 3 scout ships before the squadron commander retreated. Silence fell on the bridge. No Vex ship had been lost in a first contact scenario in over 2,000 years. Impossible, Thorne said finally. Our scout ships are superior to anything these humans could possess. The squadron commander reports that the humans used unusual tactics. They appear to have sacrificed several of their own ships to create openings for their attack vessels. Thorne's eyes narrowed. Sacrifice was not a concept the Vex understood. Well, why would any commander throw away resources? It changes nothing, he said after a moment. Prepare the fleet for full combat deployment. I will lead this conquest personally. As the fleet accelerated toward human space, Thorne looked at the tactical display showing Earth and its colonies. Such a small territory. Such a young species. How could they possibly stand against the might of an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds over 10,000 years? Nothing in the universe had ever made the Vex afraid. That was about to change. Captain Reed of the Earth Defense Force stood on the bridge of the Defiant, his eyes fixed on the main screen. 6 unidentified vessels had entered the Mars defense perimeter 10 minutes ago. They moved like nothing he had ever seen before, smooth, silent, and impossibly fast. Any response to our hails? Reed asked. He was a tall man with dark skin and a closely trimmed beard. 20 years in space had left him with a calm that younger officers envied. Lieutenant Park shook her head. Nothing, sir. Reed frowned. First, contact protocols were clear. Establish communication, show peaceful intentions but never appear weak. Humanity had learned through centuries of its own bloody history that weakness invited aggression. Send another message, Reed ordered. All frequencies, all known formats. Make it clear we mean no harm, but this is restricted space. Park nodded and began transmitting. The bridge crew waited, tense but disciplined. The response came without warning. Two of Earth's communication satellites exploded in silent bursts of light. "They've fired on our comm array," Park shouted. Reed's face hardened. "So that's how it's going to be. Sound general quarters. Launch defense squadrons. Inform Earth Command that we have hostile first contact." Alarm klaxons wailed throughout the ship. Reed watched as his small fleet of 20 ships moved to defensive positions. They were mainly patrol vessels, lightly armed but fast. Against the strange black ships, they looked like toys. "Sir," Park said, her voice tight. "Earth Command says, reinforcements are 8 hours away. We are authorized to engage under Defense Protocol 7. Reed nodded grimly. "Protocol 7, last line of defense. No retreat. All ships," he commanded. "Execute maneuver Thermopylae." Commander Shar of the Vex Scout Fleet watched with mild interest as the human vessels began to move. Their formation was unusual, not the standard defensive sphere most species adopted, but something more complex. Some ships moved forward while others hung back. Primitive vessels, he noted to his second-in-command. No energy shielding, minimal armor, basic propulsion systems. "They are changing formation," his officer replied. "Attack pattern?" Shar made a dismissive gesture with his upper limb. "Let them try. Our shields can withstand anything they possess." The human ships suddenly accelerated to surprising speeds. They split into 3 groups, each targeting a different Vex vessel. "Curious," Shar said. "They're dividing their forces against superior enemies. Tactically illogical." What happened next caught the Vex completely by surprise. The human ships didn't fire their weapons from a distance as expected. Instead, they drove straight toward the Vex vessels on collision courses. "Evasive action," Shar ordered, but it was too late. 3 human ships slammed into one of the Vex scouts. Their reactors detonated on impact, creating an electromagnetic pulse that washed over the Vex ship. Its shields flickered and died. "Impossible," Shar muttered. No species sacrificed ships in suicide attacks during first contact. It defied all logic. Before the Vex could recover, the second wave of human vessels opened fire on the now unshielded scout ship. Primitive missiles and energy weapons tore into the exposed hull. The Vex vessel exploded in a ball of blue fire. Shar stared in disbelief. A Vex ship destroyed by primitives? It hadn't happened in living memory. "All vessels, full combat protocols," he ordered. "Destroy all human ships." The battle that followed was short but shocking. The Vex lost 5 scout ships to the human 17. By any measure, it was a Vex victory, but one that came at an unthinkable cost. Vex scouts simply didn't lose ships against primitive species. Ever. As his damaged vessel limped away from the Mars defense perimeter, Shar composed his report to Admiral Thorne with shaking hands. How could he explain such losses against a species that should have surrendered at the first show of Vex power? On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Admiral Thorne read the battle report with growing rage. 5 ships lost to primitives? His voice was deadly quiet. Commander Shar should be executed for incompetence. Captain Mara stood at attention, careful to keep her expression neutral. "The battle recordings confirm his report, Admiral. The humans used unusual tactics." "Show me," Thorne ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the battle from multiple angles. Thorne watched as human ships deliberately collided with Vex vessels, as human captains coordinated attacks that sacrificed many to take down one enemy ship, as damaged human vessels continued fighting long after most species would have surrendered. Intelligence Officer Wren stepped forward. "If I may, Admiral." Thorne nodded stiffly. "I believe we are witnessing something unprecedented," Wren said. "These humans do not respond to intimidation as other species do. Our standard conquest approach may be ineffective." "Nonsense," Thorne snapped. "They caught our scouts by surprise with unconventional tactics. It will not happen again." Wren hesitated, then continued. "I have been analyzing their communication patterns during the battle. Their language contains concepts that are difficult to translate. They speak of courage, sacrifice, and duty in ways our language has no words for. All species have similar concepts, Thorne dismissed. Not like this, Wren insisted. When a human ship was damaged, the captain ordered his crew to abandon ship. Then he remained behind to pilot the vessel into one of our scouts. His final transmission was, for Earth and all humanity. He sacrificed himself deliberately. Thorne frowned. Self-sacrifice for the collective was not unknown among some hive species, but those were driven by biological imperatives. These humans appeared to choose sacrifice through some incomprehensible reasoning. It changes nothing, Thorne declared after a moment. Prepare the fleet for full assault. We will crush their main defenses in a single attack. Then they will understand true power, and they will surrender like all the others. But doubt had crept into his mind, a sensation so unfamiliar that he barely recognized it. On Earth, the Defense Council gathered in an underground bunker beneath the old city of Geneva. 12 men and women seated around a circular table representing the unified governments of humanity. General Hayes, head of the Earth Defense Force, stood before a holographic display showing the battle at Mars. Her face was grim but determined. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing is humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. They attacked without provocation after we attempted peaceful communication. President Chen leaned forward. What are we dealing with, General? We don't know much yet. Their technology is far advanced beyond ours. Their ships absorb our sensor scans. Based on the Mars engagement, they expected us to surrender immediately. But we didn't, said Director Patel of Science Division. No, Hayes said with a hint of pride. Captain Reed and his fleet followed Protocol 7. They took down 5 enemy vessels before being destroyed. At the cost of 17 ships and over 2,000 lives, Chen noted solemnly. Hayes nodded. Yes, Mr. President. But they've sent us something invaluable. Information. We now know these aliens can be hurt. Their ships can be destroyed. And what's coming next? Asked the representative from the African Union. Hayes touched the display and it changed to show long-range sensor readings. A vast fleet of black ships was moving toward Earth. Hundreds of them led by a vessel so large it dwarfed everything around it. This, she said simply. Our estimates suggest they'll reach Earth in 7 days. Silence fell over the room. What are our options? Chen finally asked. Hayes straightened her shoulders. We fight. We've already begun evacuating civilians to the underground shelters. All military personnel are on highest alert. We're activating every ship, every weapon, every defense system we have. Will it be enough? Someone asked. Hayes looked each council member in the eye before answering. Probably not. Their technology outmatches ours by centuries. In a conventional war, we would lose. So what do? Chen pressed. We don't fight a conventional war, Hayes replied. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own near destruction of the environment. We survived because we adapt, we improvise, we endure. She touched the display again, bringing up images of Earth's defense plans. We fight with everything we have. We make them pay for every inch of space, every foot of ground, and maybe, just maybe, we show them that humanity is not a species that can be conquered. As the council began discussing specific defense strategies, Hayes looked back at the image of the approaching alien fleet. In 7 days, humanity would face the greatest threat in its history, but humans had always done their best when the odds were against them. The aliens might not know it yet, but they had awakened something terrible on this small blue planet. Humanity united against a common enemy. Throughout history, nothing had ever proven more dangerous. New Mars was humanity's oldest and largest colony outside Earth. Nearly 50,000 people lived under its massive domes, working the mines and farms that helped support Earth's growing population. The colony had been mankind's first permanent foothold on another world, a symbol of human determination and ingenuity. Now it was about to become a battlefield. Colonel Adams stood at the command center of New Mars Defense Base, looking at the tactical display with grim determination. The Vex fleet had entered Mars orbit 30 minutes ago, hundreds of black ships blotting out the stars. Status of evacuation? Adams asked. She was a compact woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war on Earth before humans reached for the stars. 80% complete, Major West replied. The last civilian transports will leave in 20 minutes. Adams nodded. And our defenses? All automated systems online. Missile batteries charged. The minefield is active. All soldiers in position. Outside the base, 2,000 Earth Defense Force troops prepared for ground combat. They knew what was coming. They had seen the transmissions from Earth about the approaching Vex fleet. They knew the odds. None had asked to leave with the civilians. Adams checked her sidearm, an old habit from her days fighting in the water wars back on Earth. Let's make sure these aliens understand what it means to fight humans. Admiral Thorne's voice boomed across all communication frequencies as the Vex fleet surrounded the red planet. Attention, human colony. This is Admiral Thorne of the Vex Empire. Your pitiful defense fleet has been destroyed. Your homeworld will soon fall. Surrender now and some of you may live as servants of the Empire. Resist and you will be eliminated. You have 1 hour to decide. In the new Mars Command Center, Colonel Adams didn't hesitate. She opened a channel to respond. This is Colonel Emma Adams of the Earth Defense Force. We've received your message and discussed your terms. She paused. Our answer is, come and get us, you overgrown cockroaches. She cut the transmission and turned to her officers. That should piss them off. Major West couldn't hide his smile. Yes, ma'am. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Admiral Thorne's face darkened with rage. Cockroaches, he snarled. They dare? Captain Mara stood perfectly still, knowing better than to speak when the Admiral was angry. Intelligence Officer Wren, however, stepped forward. Admiral, I believe this is another example of the unusual human psychology I mentioned. They are provoking us deliberately. Then they will learn the cost of such insolence, Thorne growled. Begin the landing. Standard conquest pattern. Level. They're major structures. Kill any who resist. Wren cleared his throat. If I may suggest, Admiral, perhaps we should adjust our standard approach. These humans have already demonstrated— Enough, Thorne cut him off. I have conquered 17 worlds using these tactics. I will not change them for primitives who got lucky once. Wren bowed and retreated, but the doubt in his eyes was clear. The Vex dropships descended through the thin Martian atmosphere like falling stars. There were hundreds of them, each carrying 50 Vex warriors in heavy combat armor. The first wave targeted the main colony dome, expecting to crush resistance quickly and establish a beachhead for the main invasion force. They never reached the ground. As soon as the dropships entered the lower atmosphere, the hidden human missile batteries opened fire. Hundreds of missiles streaked upward, each one targeting a specific dropship. The Vex pilots took evasive action, but the human missiles adjusted course, tracking their targets with relentless precision. 30 dropships exploded mid-air. The rest scattered, their neat formation broken. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Admiral Thorne watched with growing disbelief. How did they acquire targeting locks through our stealth systems? He demanded. Captain Mara quickly reviewed the sensor data. They didn't, Admiral. Each missile appears to be manually guided by a human operator. Impossible. No organic being has reflexes fast enough to track our ships manually. Mara's voice was steady, but her eyes showed concern. The humans appear to have trained specifically for this scenario. They're anticipating our evasion patterns. Thorne slammed his fist down on the command console. Send in the second wave. Full combat deployment. Destroy those missile batteries. Colonel Adams watched as the second wave of Vex ships approached. This time, they came in lower and faster, hugging the Martian surface to avoid the missile batteries' firing arcs. They learn quickly, she noted. Activate the minefield. Major West pressed a sequence on his console. Across the dusty Martian plain surrounding the colony, thousands of hidden explosives detonated. The approaching Vex ships flew directly into a wall of fire and shrapnel. More ships fell, but many made it through. The first Vex troops touched down on Martian soil 2 miles from the main colony dome. Adams nodded to herself. It was time for Phase 2. All ground forces engage as planned. Remember your training. These things may be bigger and stronger, but we're fighting for our homes. The Vex ground commander, Sub-Admiral Drav, led his troops toward the human colony, with complete confidence. Initial resistance had been stronger than expected, but now they were on the ground. No species could match the Vex in direct combat. His warriors were 8 feet tall, protected by advanced armor that could withstand most energy weapons. Each carried a plasma rifle capable of vaporizing a human with a single shot. They moved in perfect formation, as they had on 100 conquered worlds. The first sign that something was wrong came when his forward scouts disappeared without warning. "Report," Drav commanded. "What happened to Scout Team 1? "Unknown, Sub-Admiral," his second-in-command replied. "They've stopped transmitting." Drav frowned. "Send Team 2 to investigate." Before his order could be carried out, the ground beneath his front line erupted. Explosives buried in the Martian soil detonated, sending Vex warriors flying through the thin atmosphere. "Ambush!" Drav shouted. "Defensive formation!" His warriors responded instantly, forming a protective circle. But the humans were nowhere to be seen. Instead, small robotic vehicles emerged from hidden bunkers, racing toward the Vex formation. Each carried a powerful explosive charge. "Destroy those machines," Drav ordered. The Vex opened fire, destroying many of the robots. But there were too many, and they moved erratically, making them difficult targets. Several reached the Vex formation and detonated, creating gaps in their lines. Only then did the humans attack. They came from underground tunnels wearing exoskeletal combat suits that enhanced their strength and speed. Their weapons were primitive by Vex standards, ballistic rifles firing metal projectiles, but they aimed for weak points in the Vex armor with remarkable precision. Drav watched in growing horror as his perfect formation disintegrated into chaos. The humans didn't engage in direct combat. They struck quickly, retreated, then attacked from another direction. They used the terrain that they had clearly prepared in advance, falling back to defensive positions when pressed, luring Vex warriors into carefully planned kill zones. "This is Sub-Admiral Drav," he transmitted to the fleet. "Request immediate air support. The humans are using guerrilla tactics. We need—" His transmission cut off as a human sniper's bullet found the gap between his helmet and chest plate. The New Mars Command Center. Colonel Adams watched the battle unfold on tactical displays. The humans were taking losses, heavy losses, but the Vex were paying for every inch of ground. "Ma'am," Major West reported, "Vex dropships are landing at Sectors 7 and 12. They're trying to flank our main defense line." Adams nodded. "Activate the tunnel collapse in those sectors." Across the battlefield, carefully weakened sections of the underground tunnel network caved in, burying dozens of Vex warriors in Martian soil. "How long until the package is ready?" Adams asked. 10 more minutes, Colonel." She checked the casualty reports. Nearly 40% of her forces were down. The Vex were learning, adapting to human tactics. Soon they would overwhelm the remaining defenders through sheer numbers and firepower, but they only needed to hold out a little longer. On the Eternal Conquest, Admiral Thorne paced the bridge, his rage building with each report from the surface. 3 hours, he snarled. 3 hours against primitives and we still haven't secured their main colony? Captain Mara stood at attention. "The humans are using the terrain to their advantage, Admiral. They've prepared for this battle extensively." "Excuses," Thorne roared. "These are humans. Soft, weak creatures who only left their homeworld a century ago." Intelligence Officer Wren studied the battle data on his console. "Admiral, I believe we need to reassess our understanding of this species. Their tactics show a level of adaptability and determination that—" "Double the landing force," Thorne interrupted. "I want that colony taken in the next hour. Use orbital bombardment to clear their defensive positions." Wren exchanged a worried glance with Captain Mara. "Admiral, may I remind you that we want to capture their resources intact? Orbital bombardment would—" "I don't care about the resources anymore," Thorne said, his voice dangerously quiet. No species defies the Vex Empire. None. They must be taught a lesson that the rest of their kind will never forget. As the orders went out for increased bombardment, none of the Vex noticed the small, stealthy human vessels that had slipped away from Mars during the chaos of battle, carrying something precious toward Earth, data on Vex weapons, tactics, and weaknesses. The Vex High Command had not met in person for 7 centuries. There had been no need. The Empire expanded steadily, adding new worlds and species to its domain without serious challenges. Local admirals handled conquests routinely, reporting their victories through regular channels. But now, the 12 highest-ranking Vex gathered in the ancient chamber aboard the Supreme Dominion, the oldest and largest vessel in the Vex fleet. This massive ship, 10 times the size of Admiral Thorne's dreadnought, had not moved from its position at the heart of Vex space in over 1,000 years. Supreme Leader Vox sat on an elevated throne, looking down at the assembled commanders. His skin was pale gray, almost white with age. Unlike other Vex, he had no battle scars. His position had kept him from direct combat for centuries, but his eyes were sharp and cold as he studied the reports from Earth. 3 weeks, he said, his voice surprisingly strong. 3 weeks, and we have not conquered a single human world completely. Explain this failure. Admiral Thorne stepped forward. As the commander of the Earth invasion fleet, the failure was his responsibility. Supreme Leader, the humans are unusual. They fight with tactics we have not encountered before. Unusual? Vox's voice dripped with contempt. They are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their bodies are weak. They live short, meaningless lives. Yet you claim they can stand against the Empire? Thorne straightened his spine. The facts are undeniable. We have lost over 200 ships, thousands of warriors. The Mars colony still has not been fully pacified. Their Earth defense fleet has bloodied our forces repeatedly using suicide, tactics, and improvised weapons. Vox's eyes narrowed. So you admit defeat? Never, Thorne said quickly. I request additional resources. The planet cleansers. The planet cleansers? Vox leaned forward. You would destroy worlds rich in resources because you cannot defeat their primitive defenders? Intelligence Officer Wren stepped forward, breaking protocol. Supreme Leader, if I may speak? The chamber fell silent. A lower-ranking officer addressing the Supreme Leader without permission was unheard of. Vox studied the small intelligence officer for a long moment. Speak. The humans are not like other species we have conquered, Wren said. They do not follow predictable patterns. They adapt rapidly. They sacrifice willingly. Most concerning, they view defeat as temporary. Explain, Vox commanded. When we destroy their ships, they build more. When we take their territory, they retreat and plan counterattacks. Even when completely outmatched, they continue fighting. Wren activated a holographic display showing battle footage. This is from the Mars colony. The display showed human soldiers, clearly injured, continuing to fight until they could no longer move. It showed civilians turning common tools into weapons. It showed children helping to set traps for Vex warriors. They have a concept they call hope, Wren continued. It seems to grow stronger the more we push them. They believe they can win even when all logic says they cannot. Vox's face remained impassive, but his eyes showed something rare for a Vex, uncertainty. Admiral Krell, commander of the Eastern Fleet, spoke up. This is absurd. No species can stand against our full might. We should commit the entire fleet, crush their homeworld, and end this. I agree, said another admiral. Destroy their centers of population. Break their will to resist. Wren shook his head. That approach may not work with humans. Their history is filled with examples of devastating attacks that only strengthen their resolve. Enough debate, Vox declared. Admiral Thorne, you will have your reinforcements. 3 more battle fleets will join you. Admiral Krell will assume overall command. Thorne stiffened but said nothing. However, Vox continued, we will not use the planet cleansers. These humans and their worlds will join the Empire intact. Their unusual qualities may be useful once properly harnessed. As the commanders filed out of the chamber, Wren approached Thorne cautiously. "Admiral, I believe we should reconsider our approach to this war." Thorne glared at him. "Careful, intelligence officer. Your observations border on disloyalty." "Not disloyalty, Admiral. Pragmatism. I have studied thousands of human communications. They are spreading across their star system rapidly. They have 17 colonies already. They breed quickly and establish new settlements constantly. Even if we destroy their homeworld, they will continue fighting. Every species can be broken," Thorne insisted. "Perhaps," Wren said quietly. "But at what cost to the Empire?" On Earth, the War Council met daily in the underground command center beneath Geneva. What had started as 12 representatives had expanded to include military commanders, scientists, and engineers. Anyone with ideas that might help humanity survive. General Hayes pointed to the latest intelligence on the main display. "The Vex are bringing in reinforcements. 3 more fleets, at least 1,000 ships." President Chen nodded, grimly. "And our status?" "We've evacuated as many people as possible to the deep shelters. Production of new ships and weapons continues around the clock. The Mars colony is still fighting, tying down Vex forces." Hayes paused. "But I won't lie to you. The next attack will be worse than anything we've seen so far." Dr. Wilson, head of the science division, stepped forward. "We've made progress understanding their technology. The data from Mars has been invaluable." "Explain," Chen said. Wilson activated a side display showing diagrams of Vex ships and weapons. "Their technology isn't actually that far beyond ours in basic principles. They're just more refined, more efficient. But there are weaknesses we can exploit." He highlighted sections of a Vex ship. "Their shield generators operate on predictable frequencies. Their communication systems can be jammed. And most importantly, they think like conquerors, not defenders." "Meaning?" Hayes asked. "Their tactics are all focused on overwhelming force and intimidation. When those fail, they don't adapt well, they just use more force." Wilson looked around the room. "They've never had to fight a defensive war. They don't understand what it means to fight for survival." Hayes nodded slowly. "So we hit them where they don't expect it." "Exactly," Wilson said. "They expect us to defend Earth with everything we have. So instead we take the fight to them." President Chen frowned. "How?" "Their ships outgun ours 10-1. Colonel Reeves of Special Operations stood up. "We don't fight their ships directly. We infiltrate them." She brought up a new display showing small, stealthy vessels. "We've modified scout ships with captured Vex technology. They can approach the Vex fleet undetected. Small teams can board their vessels, gather intelligence, plant explosives, or even capture smaller ships." "It's a suicide mission," someone objected. "Maybe," Reeves acknowledged, "but we have no shortage of volunteers." Chen looked around the room. "Will it be enough?" No one answered immediately. Finally, Dr. Wilson spoke. "By itself? No. But it's part of the larger strategy. We don't need to win this war conventionally. We just need to make it so costly that they decide we're not worth conquering." Hayes nodded in agreement. "Exactly. Every day we hold out, we learn more about their weaknesses. We adapt our weapons and tactics. We become stronger while they grow frustrated. And if they decide to simply destroy Earth rather than conquer it?" Chen asked quietly. The room fell silent again. "Then humanity continues," Hayes said firmly. "Our colonies grow stronger every day. Mars still fights. Europa, Titan, the asteroid bases. Even if Earth falls, humans will survive. And someday we'll take our home back." Chen studied the determined faces around him. 3 weeks ago, these people had been politicians, career military, scientists focused on peaceful exploration. Now they were fighting for the survival of their species. And somehow, despite everything, they still believed they could win. As the meeting concluded, he pulled General Hayes aside. "The special project, how close are we?" Hayes glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. "Project Trojan, the prototype, is ready. We'll deploy it with the infiltration teams. And if it works, Hayes allowed herself a small smile. Then the Vex will learn that humans don't just adapt to technology. We steal it and make it better. 3 years into the war, Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, watching the battle unfold around the gas giant humans called Jupiter. What should have been a simple operation to destroy the human mining stations on the moon, Callisto had turned into yet another frustrating engagement. The humans had hidden their defensive fleet behind the radiation belts of Jupiter, emerging only to strike at Vex ships before retreating back to safety. Their vessels were different now, faster, more maneuverable, with weapons that seemed specifically designed to target Vex shield frequencies. "Admiral," Captain Mara reported. "Battle Group 3 reports heavy damage. The humans are using some kind of new torpedo that phases through our outer shields." Thorne's face was a mask of controlled fury. 3 years of constant warfare had left its mark on him. New scars crossed his gray skin, and his once proud posture had a slight stoop of exhaustion. "Redirect Battle Group 5 to support them," he ordered, "and launch another wave of fighters." Intelligence Officer Wren approached cautiously. Unlike Thorne, he seemed energized by the long conflict, his eyes bright with the challenge of understanding the human enemy. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy readings from the human flagship." "Explain," Thorne demanded. Wren studied his datapad. "The readings are similar to our own dreadnought power signatures, but that's impossible. Humans don't have that technology." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Unless they've stolen it." He turned to his communications officer. "Alert all vessels. The human flagship is to be destroyed immediately, priority target." But the warning came too late. The human vessel Defiance, twice the size of any previous human ship, emerged from behind one of Jupiter's moons. Its hull gleamed with an odd, light-absorbing material that looked disturbingly similar to Vex technology. Instead of the usual human weapons, it fired beams of concentrated energy that cut through Vex shields, as if they weren't there. "Impossible," Thorne whispered. On his tactical display, he watched as 3 Vex cruisers were destroyed in rapid succession. The Defiance moved with impossible speed for its size, its maneuvers defying the tactical predictions of the Vex computers. "All vessels concentrate fire on that ship," Thorne ordered. The Vex fleet responded, dozens of ships turning their weapons toward the human flagship. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked across space, only to be absorbed by shields that glowed with the same blue energy as Vex protection systems. "They've adapted our technology," Wren said, his voice a mixture of horror and admiration. "They've not only stolen it, they've improved it." Before Thorne could respond, alarms blared. Across the bridge, multiple breaches reported throughout the ship. Captain Mara announced, "We're being boarded." Commander Alex of the Earth Special Forces moved swiftly through the corridors of the Vex dreadnought. 3 years of war had turned the once ordinary naval officer into something else, part soldier, part spy, part alien technology expert. The boarding team of 20 humans moved with practiced precision. Their combat suits were a mixture of human and Vex technology, providing both protection and enhanced strength. Their weapons fired energy pulses specifically calibrated to penetrate Vex armor. "Remember the objective," Alex said through the team comm system. "We take the bridge intact. We need Admiral Thorne alive." The team encountered heavy resistance as they approached the command deck. Vex warriors fought with the desperation of those who had never expected to defend their own ships. Alex ducked behind a corner as energy blasts scorched the wall. "Team 2, activate Plan Echo." On the other side of the command deck, the second boarding team placed a small device against the wall. The device hummed briefly, then projected an exact replica of the corridor, empty, while making the actual team invisible to Vex sensors. The Vex guards, seeing an empty corridor on their sensors, turned their attention back to Alex's team. They never noticed the invisible humans moving behind them until it was too late. With the path clear, Alex led the team to the bridge entrance. "Breach on my mark. Remember, we need the Admiral alive." Alex took a deep breath. 3, 2, 2, 1. Mark. The door to the bridge exploded inward. Admiral Thorne had lived his entire life as a conqueror. He had never imagined he would face enemy boarders on his own bridge. Yet here he stood, surrounded by human soldiers in armor that incorporated Vex technology, their weapons trained on his command crew. A human stepped forward, removing a helmet, to reveal a face with determined eyes and a scar running from temple to jaw. "Admiral Thorne," the human said, "I'm Commander Alex of the Earth Defense Force. Your ship is now under our control." Thorne straightened to his full height, towering over the human. "Kill me and be done with it. I will not surrender." Alex smiled slightly. "If we wanted you dead, Admiral, you'd be dead already. We're here to talk." This was so unexpected that Thorne could only stare. 3 years of war, Alex continued. Millions dead on both sides. And for what? There's room enough in this galaxy for both our species. "You would speak of peace after all this?" Thorne gestured to the human soldiers, their weapons still aimed at his crew. "You board my ship, steal our technology, and then expect me to negotiate?" "We adapted your technology," Alex corrected. "Just as we've adapted to everything throughout our history. It's what humans do. We see, we learn, we improve." Intelligence Officer Wren stepped forward cautiously. "Commander, may I speak?" Alex nodded. "Admiral," Wren said, "I've studied humans extensively during this conflict. They are unlike any species we've encountered. Their strength isn't in their bodies or even their technology. It's in their minds, their ability to adapt, to find new solutions, to unite against common threats." "You sound like you admire them," Thorne accused. "I do," Wren admitted. "And so should you. Think, Admiral. In 3 years, they've gone from primitive ships to vessels that can challenge our best. They've taken our technology and improved upon it. What will they be capable of in 10 years, in 50? Thorne looked from Wren to the human commander, his mind racing. The Vex had conquered for 10,000 years because they were technologically superior to every species they encountered. But if that advantage was gone, if the humans could not only match but exceed Vex technology, "What are your terms?" he finally asked. 6 months later, Admiral Thorne stood in a park on Earth, watching human children play under the open sky. The peace talks were ongoing, complex negotiations between two species that had tried to exterminate each other for years. Commander Alex, now Ambassador Alex, approached and stood beside him. "Still trying to understand us?" Alex asked. Thorne nodded. "Your children play while diplomats decide the fate of your species. No Vex would be so relaxed." "That's the point you're missing," Alex said. "We don't fight because we're afraid. We fight because we want our children to be able to play without fear. Every human you see here knows the war could restart tomorrow, but we refuse to live as if it will." "Hope," Thorne said, remembering Wren's reports. "Your irrational belief that things will improve despite evidence to the contrary." Alex smiled. "It served us well so far." A small human child approached, looking up at Thorne with curious eyes. The Admiral tensed, still uncomfortable with civilian interactions. The child held up a drawing, a crude representation of a Vex ship and a human ship side by side rather than firing at each other. "For you," the child said simply, before running back to join the others. Thorne looked at the drawing, then at the playing children, then at the blue sky above. For the first time in his long life, he considered a universe where strength came not from conquering, but from creating, where different species might actually benefit from each other's differences rather than fighting to prove superiority. "Your Vex Empire has stood for 10,000 years, Alex said quietly. "Imagine what we might build together that could last even longer." Thorne carefully folded the child's drawing and placed it inside his uniform. "Together," he repeated, testing the word. It felt strange, but not entirely unpleasant. As they walked through the park, Thorne realized that the Vex had feared nothing in the universe until they met humans. The war that followed had nearly destroyed both species. But perhaps what came after, this uncertain, difficult peace, would be the greatest conquest of all, the conquest of fear itself. For the first time since the war began, Admiral Thorne felt something unusual stirring within him. It took a moment to recognize it, this alien sensation. It was hope,